All right, so the other part of working with quadratics and being able to graph a quadratic is, let me fix this a little bit, is looking for the x and the y intercepts. So remember with a parabola, a quadratic, if you have a graph, you can see it crosses the y once, it crosses the x twice. That's any quadratic. You're going to have two x values, one y value, okay, for any quadratic. Now, sometimes the quadratic doesn't cross the x-axis. Sometimes maybe it's up here, and so it doesn't cross up there. Eventually, it will cross the y-axis, so there is going to be a point where it does cross the y-axis. It may be, you know, in the millions, but it still will cross. So I'm going to show you both how to find the x and the y intercept. It depends on if you have standard form or vertex format will determine how you're going to find it. So let's start with the x-intercept. So the x-intercept is when y is 0, right? So anytime you have an x-intercept, your y value is going to be 0. So when you're working with those, let me put our function up here. Okay, so that was our function that we started with. This is the same function, but in x vertex format. Okay, so exact same function. One's in standard form, one's in vertex format. Okay, so to find your x-intercepts, that means your y is 0. So what you're going to do is you are going to set your function to 0. Okay, whether it's standard or vertex format, doesn't matter. The y is still 0. So now when you have something like this and you can't factor it, this is where you can use the quadratic formula. So remember the quadratic formula looks like this. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so where do these values come from? This is my a, this is my b, this is my c. Okay, so you just plug it in. It's a formula. You plug in and you chug out the answer. So to get the x-intercepts, the two, remember I said there's going to be two? Well, you have a plus version and you have a minus version. Those are your two answers. So we're going to use a, b, and c. So it's negative b, so negative 12, plus or minus the square root of negative 12 squared, minus 4, a is negative 2, c is negative 15, all over 2 times a. Okay, so now we're going to work this out. I'm going to erase this part because we don't need it anymore. We'll get back to that, so I have more room. Now we're just simplifying it. Do underneath the radical first. So negative 12 squared is 144. So we have a negative 12, which is a positive 12. And we have negative 4 times negative 2 is 8. 8 times 15, I don't have my calculator with me, is 120. All over negative 4. Okay. So we have, let me grab my calculator. I had it out. There it is. Okay, so let me just double check my numbers. Negative 12 squared is 144. 4 times 2 times 15 is 120. So 144 minus 120 is 24. So we have 12 plus or minus the square root of 24 all over negative 4. So I find the square root of 24. So I have 12 plus or minus 4.898979 all over negative 4. So that plus 12 divided by negative 4 gives you a negative 4.22. And then we're going to do 12 minus 4.898979 divided by negative 4 is negative 1.78. So those are your two x-intercepts. Okay, those are the two x-intercepts. a negative 4.22, and a negative 1.78. Okay, so those are my two x-intercepts. Y-intercept is easy. Y-intercept in standard form is sitting right there. So my y-intercept is negative 15. Okay? Y-intercept is negative 15. It's whatever the value is when x is 0. So x is 0, that dumps out. X is 0, that dumps out. The only thing I have left is negative 15. So in standard form, the y-intercept's super easy to find. In vertex form, it's a little bit more difficult to find. So now let's go back through and find your x-intercepts in the when you have vertex format. Okay, so the vertex format was this one, negative 2, x plus 3 squared plus 3. So x-intercepts is when y is 0. Okay, so we're going to solve for x. So we're going to start peeling things off. So we're going to get rid of the 3 by subtracting 3. So we have negative 3 equals negative 2 times x plus 3 squared. We're going to get rid of this negative 2 by dividing. So we end up with 3 halves equals x plus 3 squared. Okay. To get rid of the squared, we have to square root it. So we're going to square root both sides. So we end up with x plus 2 equals the square root of 3 halves. So I'm going to calculate that out. Square root of 3 halves is plus or minus 1.2247. And then we're going to subtract 2 from both sides. So x equals